This is a summary of the novel Adventures of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain. This novel was published in 1876, and it starts with Tom Sawyer. He's stealing some jam from his Aunt Polly, and she comes in and she is about to whip him for doing something bad, and he tricks her and he runs away. When he runs away, he goes out into his town. He's walking around, and he meets this kid by the name of Alfred Temple. Now, Alfred Temple is he has really nice clothes, and Tom doesn't like this, so he beats him up. They get in a fight, and they kindle this hatred for each other. The novel moves on, and Tom gets in trouble again. Tom gets in trouble a lot in this novel. And his Aunt Polly says to Tom that for punishment this time, you're going to have to paint our fence. You're going to have to paint this fence white. You're going to have to whitewash this fence. And Tom doesn't want to do this. And when he starts to do this, he's like, I have to get out of this chore. I don't want to do this. I have a lot of things to do. So when he starts to paint this fence, he gets this idea that he's gonna get other people to paint this fence for him. So when his friends come, they start to mock him. They say like, you're painting this fence because you're in trouble. And Tom's like, no, 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 I'm not in trouble. I am working on a work of art. I am an artist. That's why they've trusted me to paint this fence. He says not any type of boy can do this work. My aunt has trusted me to do something that nobody else can do. So he really sells this point that he's doing something amazing and that he's not being punished. And the other boys, they believe into it to the point where they gave him their stuff so that they can paint the fence. And they do this with vigor. They don't look at it as a chore because Tom Sawyer has sold this chore to them as something that is a work of art, as something that is very special. And he has kind of like Tom Sawyer has kind of like a philosophy moment here. He's like, if you make something that's completely worthless, if you make it valuable, people will fight over it to do it. A great example of this is diamonds. Diamonds, we don't have a particularly use for them, but because of weddings and we've put them into rings and we've glorified them, we've made diamonds seem valuable. We've made diamonds seem extremely valuable. Same thing as gold, same thing as metals, same thing as, money. It's because we give value to them. That's why they're valuable. If we didn't give any value to them, they would be worthless. So by making this fence seem like it's something very important, these kids were fighting. They even gave Tom their stuff so that they can do his chores. So the novel moves on. Tom Sawyer meets this kid by the name of Huckleberry Finn, and he's not really respected. His dad, Huckleberry Finn's dad, is the town drunk. His mother is not in the picture. So Huck does whatever he wants. He doesn't. He doesn't really have any, guides or any people on top of him. He does whatever comes to his heart. He walks barefoot. He sleeps wherever he wants. He gets into trouble. He doesn't even go to school because there's nobody there to make him go to school. So all the other kids, they're really envious of Huck because they want to be free. They want to be able to have fun whenever they want, but they don't have that life. So Tom Sawyer and Huck, they become friends. They become the best of friends, and their first adventures together, they go to a graveyard to set out on an adventure. And while they're there, they see these three men by the name of Injun Joe, um, Muff Potter, and Dr. Robinson. Dr. Robinson hires these two guys to help him, dig this grave site so that he can get this body and have some medical experiments on. But while they're doing this, Injun Joe had a vendetta towards Dr. Robinson, and he kills him. He blames the whole thing on Muff Potter because Muff Potter's a drunk. He blacks out, and Injun Joe puts the murder weapon into Muff Potter's hands. And when he gets up, Muff Potter believes that he's the one that killed the doctor, even though it was Injun Joe who did the whole thing. So Injun Joe blames Muff Potter. Muff Potter kind of runs away, but he comes back. They put him into jail. They don't have a trial for him. This is not the trial. They just put him into jail. So that's important to keep in mind. So Huck and Tom, they see this whole thing. They're witnesses, but they don't tell anybody. They don't say anything, and Muff Potter is just in prison at this point. A new person comes into town by the name of Becky Thatcher after the situation. Becky Thatcher is a very beautiful girl. She's the same age as Tom, and Tom falls in love with her as soon as she steps on the scene. And eventually they get engaged the way that children can get engaged. You know, it's kind of like, it's not like wedding ring and all that. Tom Sawyer says, I want to be with you. You can't be with anybody but me. And she says the same thing. And they have like this childhood promise to each other that they're going to be together. So they're happy about this. But what happens is, as they're celebrating, Tom says, we're going to be just like me and this other girl. And Becky Thatcher gets upset. She says, oh, there's somebody else. You have been with other people than me. So she gets upset about this. And when Tom tries to fix the situation, she pushes him away. And Tom doesn't know how to deal with this. So he walks away from it. And this happens to Tom a lot. Whenever there's a situation that's too much for him to handle, Tom does walk away from it. He gets a breather. And then he eventually comes back to it. So the novel moves on. We see that Tom, Huck Finn, and another kid by the name of Joe Harper, uh, they get this idea that they don't want to stay in the town anymore. They're having too much trouble with their parents. They're getting in too much trouble. They're like, they don't want us. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go away. We're gonna walk away, and we're going to become pirates. We're going to become robbers. We're going to live on our own. So they set out to Jackson's Island, and they stayed there for several days. When their parents couldn't find them, they thought that they died. They found a raft. The kids weren't in it. They weren't in the raft. So the parents said, okay, maybe they drowned, and everybody starts crying. While the town is getting ready for their burial, because they couldn't find the kids' bodies, so they assumed that they were dead. But no, the kids were on Jackson's Island. It's kind of surprising they didn't check the island, but that's how the story goes. So the kids, they're on the island, they're playing pirates, they're digging around for treasure, they're having fun. But eventually they get homesick, and they're like, we want to go back home. And what happens is, during one night, Tom Sawyer sneaks back into the town, and he goes back to his house, and he overhears Harper's mom and his sister Mary, his half brother Sydney, and Aunt Polly. They're talking, and they're saying, they wish they had another chance to show him how much they loved him, and they're really sad that they died, and they're really feeling bad. And Tom Sawyer is so happy about this. He's like, okay, I taught them a lesson. And he's really happy. He figures out that they're going to have his funeral on a Sunday, and that they're ready to forget about them. They're gonna bury them in another way. So when it comes to this circumstance where they're about to have this death ceremony, halfway through the burial, they didn't have the bodies, of course, but halfway through the burial, Tom, Huck, and Harper, they all come barging in. They're alive, and their parents are happy. Everybody's celebrating, and everybody's happy that all of this happened. So Tom and Huck, they're kind of heroes. even Becky Thatcher, who was mad at Tom, she's a little bit happy that he's still alive because she was really upset that he died, or they thought that he died. So this little thing of jealousy comes into play here, where Tom is a hero now, so all the girls are around him. All the girls want to know more about him, and he's the man on the beat. So um, Tom is getting a lot of attention, but he never goes to Becky, and Becky gets really jealous. She gets really mad, so she tries to make Tom jealous too. So she starts talking and laughing with Alfred, the kid that Tom beat up, and Tom is furious. Tom can't, he's like, no, this can't happen to me. How dare does this Alfred kid, mess with my girl? So it's this whole jealousy game. Eventually, Alfred figures out that Becky was using him to get back at Tom. And what he does is he pours ink on Tom's spelling book to get him in trouble. And Becky doesn't tell. Becky figures this out, but he doesn't tell. She doesn't tell Tom about this. So there's this hatred and this. They're both mad at each other. Tom's mad at her. She's mad at Tom, and it's this whole back and forth game. Um, Becky kind of gets in trouble because there's this book that their teacher always reads, and it's not a children's book. There's like an obscene picture in it, and Becky snuck into her teacher's desk, and she was looking at the book, and she rips it when she sees the obscene picture, and Tom saw the whole thing. So now Tom is going to be in trouble because there's ink on his spelling book, and Becky's going to get in trouble because she ripped a book that she wasn't even supposed to be looking at in the first place. So the next day in school, we see Tom and Becky. They're in class, and the teacher figures out the ink thing with the spelling book, and he whips Tom. And Becky, who's really like, she doesn't want to get whipped, she doesn't want to be in trouble, she doesn't want anyone to be mad at her. And when the teacher figures out that his book is ripped, he was about to, um, figure out who did it to whip them. And as soon as the teacher was about to whip Becky, Tom stands up. He's like, "No, I did it. I did it." He stands up for her, and he gets two whippings. But he says like, "I don't care. I'm a tough guy." So he gets whipped two times, and Becky finds the reason why she liked Tom again. Their relationship is renewed because she saw that Tom really cared about her, and they're back to each other. Alfred, Alfred, even though that he was trying to get back at Tom, it didn't work. So that's too bad for Alfred. So the novel goes on. The kids finish school and they go off to summer. That summer, Becky goes. She leaves the town for summer break to see her family, and Tom is there by himself. And he just goes back to Huck, and they're going on adventures again. So that summer, we see the trial of Muff Potter go down. So they're all ready to convict Muff Potter of the murder of the Dr. Robinson. And Engine Joe is there. He's super happy. He knows he did it, but he framed Muff Potter so well that Muff Potter doesn't know, and nobody else knows that he killed Dr. Robinson, except for Tom and Huck. So he doesn't know that Tom and Huck knows this. He doesn't know that Tom and Huck were there at the murder. So he's very confident. And right when they're about to convict Muff Potter, they had one last witness, and Tom goes into the stand. And Tom, he was a little bit shy at first, but then he reveals the whole thing, and everybody believes him because he explained the situation in such clear definition that you had to believe him. Because the only way he would know all of these things about the murder, it's because he was there. Because if he wasn't there, he wouldn't know exactly what happened. He wouldn't know the murder weapon. He would know who was doing what. So the fact that he knew everything made everybody believe that it was Engine Joe who killed the doctor. And Engine Joe runs away, and they send out a search party for him. This is bad for Tom because now Injun Joe knows who ratted him out. He knows that Huck and Tom did it, and now he's a fugitive. Muff Potter's released. He didn't do anything, and everybody, who hated him because he killed the doctor, they love him again, and that goes back to normal. So now they couldn't find Injun Joe, and the search kind of goes off slowly, a little bit by little bit, and they stop looking for Injun Joe. And Tom and Huck, they go back to their adventures. They come up with this idea that they want to look for buried treasure. And when they start looking for buried treasure, they dig all around. They couldn't find buried treasure. And they come with this idea that they have to go to this haunted house that's been there for a long time, and they think that there's treasure inside of it. And while they're there, they're looking for the treasure, but they couldn't find it. And this is an abandoned house. Nobody goes into this house. So they're searching upstairs, the upstairs level of the house. This is a very old house. It's broken down. It's just waiting to fall. And while they're upstairs looking for treasure, Injun Joe and a Hispanic friend of his, they come into the house, and the kids are stunned. They're listening to what they're saying. They're hiding, and they hear that Injun Joe's been hiding in this haunted house. That Injun Joe has been here, and while they're listening to this, Injun Joe reveals the stash of money that he's hiding in this old house. And while he's trying to get his money and trying to plan something with his Hispanic friend, um, what happens is they stumble upon another treasure, a really massive treasure, a bunch of gold coins, and the kids are happy. But um, Injun Joe finds these tools that belong to Tom and Huck in this old house, and he's like, I didn't put these tools here. Who put them here? Because the kids were in the house already, so they left their stuff downstairs. So Injun Joe's like, okay, I'm gonna check upstairs to see if anybody's still here. And when he goes up, he's trying to climb the stairs, and the kids, their hearts are pounding. They're like, oh my god, he's gonna find us. And halfway through the stairs, Injun Joe falls. The stair breaks, and his friend says, "Forget about the kids. There's nobody here." Well, he doesn't say kids, but he's like, "Forget about. There's nobody here. Let's just plan our dastardly deeds." And what happens is Injun Joe, he takes all of the money, the one that he found, the money that he found, and the money that he was hiding there in the first place. And they take the money, they go off. Tom and Huck are really mad because if they never left their tools there, they would have never thought that there's somebody in the house, and they would have probably left the money there. So the story continues, and we see, Injun Joe's on the run. They find this old tavern in the town where it's abandoned. There's nobody there, and that's their new hideout. And Huck and Tom, they figure out that's where they're staying, and they try to go into this tavern to get the money. One night, Tom Sawyer, he goes into this tavern. He steps on Injun Joe, but Injun Joe doesn't wake up, even though that Tom is shocked. He thought he was gonna die, but Injun Joe didn't wake up when he stepped on him because he was drunk and he was blacked out. He blacked out. So Tom knows that they're in this tavern, but they never go into the tavern to search again because another thing happens in the story. What happens is they figure out that Injun Joe was planning to kill somebody, the Widow Douglas. You guys probably know the Widow Douglas from Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So Injun Joe was planning to hurt the Widow Douglas because her husband whipped him like a slave. So because her husband whipped Injun Joe like a slave, Injun Joe was going to hurt her. He was going to punish her because of what her husband did to Injun Joe. So Injun Joe was really mad. He was out to get revenge. So in the novel, Injun Joe kills a lot of people. He doesn't get to kill Widow Douglas because Huck was really fond of Widow Douglas because she's a very sweet old woman. She doesn't. She's not hard. She's really kind towards others. So Huck becomes aware of this situation, and Tom Sawyer was not with him at this point. One night, when Injun Joe and his friend they're about to go into Widow Douglas's house, um, Huck stumbles on them and he listens to them while they're talking. And they're in the bushes. They're about to go into the Widow Douglas house and hurt her. Huck figures this out. He runs down the hill. He runs away from Widow Douglas's house, and he tells the Welshman, an old man that lives close by to Widow Douglas, and he says, "Come quick! They're about to hurt the Widow Douglas." And at first, they don't believe Huck. They're like, nobody believes you. Nobody respects you in this town. You're the son of the town drunk. How are we gonna believe you? But Huck speaks with such, passion, and he's so serious that the Welshman is like, okay, we'll listen to you. They take their guns. Him and his sons take their guns, and they go up the hill. They're gonna go to Widow Douglas's house, the place where Huck describes that Injun Joe is hiding to go hurt Widow Douglas, and Huck kind of like stays back. He's a little scared because he hears a lot of gunshots. A lot of gunshots go off. The Welshmen get to the house, and a lot of gunshots go off. So Huck goes away, and he comes back in the morning to the Welshman's house to figure out what happened. When he gets there, the Welshman this time welcomes Huck with open arms. At first he didn't because no one respected Huck, but this situation kind of allowed more and more people to respect Huck because he saved Widow Douglas. He saved her life, and we see slowly more people start to respect Huck. And Injun Joe and his friend they get away. Eventually, Huck tells the Welshman, this old man, that it's Injun Joe and his friend. They're the people that are trying to hurt um, um, Widow Douglas. And the town was already looking for Injun Joe because he killed the doctor. So now two crimes that he committed, so that they're really looking for him. So everybody's looking for Injun Joe, but Tom Sawyer is not included in this part of the story. So now we go back to Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer with Becky, they're together. Becky had come back into town in the summer, and Tom Sawyer and Becky, they're together. Them and a few other classmates, they go on this trip to this cave. Now, this is a cave that's like not. It's a mountain and a cave where you go into the entrance and it's this labyrinth where there's like miles and miles of territory. And once you get into the cave, it loops and loops. So you can go into one part of the cave and you enter back into it in another section. So it's a maze inside of a cave. And Becky and Tom with their class, and they're going inside this cave, and they went very deep into it. Eventually, the rest of the people that went with them, they went back. They went back home. But Becky and Tom, they just kept on going deep into the cave, and they get lost. So this is really bad because there's no light in the cave, there's no food in the cave, there's water. There are some springs of water around, but that's pretty much it. And there are bats in the cave. So they get lost in the cave, and when all of the people get back home and they're looking for Becky and Tom, they're like, "Where's Becky and Tom?" And everybody figures out that they're still in the cave. So the whole town they rush back. They go into this cave. They're looking for Tom and Becky, but they cannot find them, and it's too deep. They don't want to go too deep into the cave where they get lost. So everybody's in this cave. Everybody's looking for Becky and Tom, but after a few days of searching, they go back. After a few hours, they go back. And Tom and Becky, they're lost in this cave. they do find a little peace in each other. Becky thought she was going to die, but Tom wouldn't let it go. He kept on looking for a way out. And while he's in this cave, he's looking around, he's looking around. Keep in mind that the last time we saw the antagonist of the story, the last time we saw Injun Joe was when he was trying to kill the widow Douglas. So he ran away. When Tom is trying to find a way out of the cave, he stumbled upon this section of the cave where Injun Joe had made his new hiding place. Injun Joe was there. He doesn't see Tom, but Tom sees him, and Tom runs away. He finds Becky, and eventually Tom figures out a way out of the cave. He gets out, he goes back home. And this was like a few days later. Everybody in the town thought that Tom had died. Everybody in the town thought that Becky and Tom were dead inside the cave and they couldn't find their way out. So Judge Thatcher, Becky's father, and Mrs. Thatcher, they're important people. When they found out that Tom and Becky are still alive and they're back in town, everybody's happy and Tom becomes this big hero. So this is like several times. First, Tom is a big hero for faking his own death. Then Tom is a big hero for saving Becky's life, and Tom is just becoming this legend. He's smart, he's cunning. He can make people paint fences for him. He can make people do his chores. So he's a smart kid that can trick anybody, and he's a con man in of a sense. He can be a con man in this novel, and everybody praised Tom and Becky. They're back in the town, and Judge Thatcher, he's so happy that he has his daughter back. Everybody's happy that everyone's back. Um, Judge Thatcher, he locks the cave, right? He puts a barrier on the cave where no one can ever enter and no one can ever get out. And this is what's really bad. Well, let's talk about it, then we'll see why it's bad. So, Judge Thatcher locks this cave, and when Tom Sawyer is talking to him, he's like, Injun Joe's in the cave, and everybody's surprised because Injun Joe had become this villain. Injun Joe had become this enemy. So when Tom Sawyer says, "Why did you lock the cave? Why did you put a barrier in the front of the cave?" Injun Joe is inside of there. And when everybody goes out, they go to find, they open the cave. Right when they open the cave, they find Injun Joe's body in the inside, and in the entrance, and his knife is broken, his tools are broken because he had, worn them out trying to get out of the cave. And he dies there of thirst of hunger because this was a few days later when they tried to open the entrance of the cave that Judge Thatcher had put in front of the cave. So the cave is now open. Injun Joe is dead, so there's no more hunting for him. So that's a little bit of peace. You see that the antagonist gets his comeuppance, and whatever you do, it always comes back around to haunt you. So the cruelty, all of the people that Injun Joe had killed, all of the people that he had abused, he gets his comeuppance, and he dies a sad and very bad end. So, everybody's happy. Injun Joe's dead, and Huck and Tom, they reunite. Huck tells Tom about how he saved the widow Douglas. Tom tells Huck about how he was in the cave and how he saved Becky's life. So Huck is praised for saving the widow, and Tom is praised for saving Becky. So they're both heroes. They're both regarded as respectable men. Now, after they get together and they're reunited, Tom says, "What happened to the money?" Huck says, "What happened to the money?" And they're both like trying to think about where's the money that Injun Joe had. And Tom says it's in the cave. And this brings back the adventure where Tom and Huck, they set out, they go back to the cave. Tom now he's comfortable inside of the cave because now he knows a lot of places in the cave. So he goes back into the cave. He finds the place where he saw Injun Joe, and inside of a hole behind this big rock, they find $12,000. So they take the stash of money. Eventually, the townspeople they bring them back, and the widow Douglas throws this big party for Huck, and Tom is also praised at this party, and everybody's having a good time. And then they're praising Huck, and then Tom says, Huck is a rich man. He's a very wealthy man, and everybody laughs. They're like, that's really funny. But Tom is serious. He's like, he's a very rich man. Everybody has like this like flabbergasted look on their face. They're like, what are you talking about? And then Tom goes outside. He brings this huge bag of money, $12,000, and he, just throws it all on the ground. He says, like, look at this. This is $12,000. I have 6,000. Huck has 6,000, and that's where the book ends. In the end, we see Huck. He hates like the widow Douglas takes him into his arm. The widow Douglas wanted to make Huck her own child um, and educate him, but Huck like couldn't stand that life. In the end, he tries to run away, but Tom Sawyer brings him back. And in the end, the book really sets up the stage for the novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, because the first book of this is Tom Sawyer and then Huckleberry Finn. So the book ends with Becky and Tom. They have a good relationship. Everybody's saved, and Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, they have money, even though that they don't really care about the money. They just love to be outside. They love to have adventure. They love to be free and barefooted in the wild. So that's the novel, guys. That's the summary. Please like and subscribe. Tell me how you feel about this video. Tell me if it helps you, and I'll see you for the next video. Thank you for watching.